Hello, and welcome to the next section of the Maker Manager program. Today we're going to focus on creating a culture of making and innovation. Ideally, this particular activity would be done with a small group of individuals, maybe a STEM committee of people that are invested in ensuring the success of your makerspace. These are the people that you would go to with your questions, the things that you really need help with. They're the people connected directly to the space. So with that small group of people, you would complete the following 4 activities: the values mapping activity, defining your stakeholders and audience, shaping the learning environment, and making a case for the makerspace. We're going to walk through this today as if we were doing it together and you are all part of my STEM committee. So let's start with this first question. I want you to think about what your community and local school values. If you can narrow this down to 3 to 5 words, that would be a good way to begin the process of creating a mission and vision for your makerspace. Once that's done, I would write that down, store it away somewhere, and then move on to the values mapping grid activity. In this particular activity, you're going to read through the statements listed here. Each of the documents that we're going to use through this activity in this section are stored within the Maker Manager platform, so you'll be able to download those and then share those with your committee members as well. Read through the following statements and find the 3 that you agree with most strongly. So these are going to hold some personal value to you. Once you've done that, you're going to use this as a grid of sorts and match up the letter and the number to that statement. So for example, if I was really confident that I thought the second statement in the first row was valuable to me, making helps young people develop good habits of mind, that label would be A1. I would do that for 3 different statements. Once I have those labels identified, I would write those down and then share this next slide to see where your label matches up with what category. So for example, if A2 or A1 was my label, then I'm drawn towards workforce development, or I've drawn towards skill development. This is going to kind of help you narrow down. And it would be really interesting if the majority of your labels, the statements that you found valuable, fit within one particular area of the 4. But this helps you to identify if, as a group, you are really focused in on your makerspace providing learning for your students, or the young people that will be working in there. If it's more geared towards workforce development, then that becomes more of the vision that you're looking for. If it's more about social justice and equity, then that's going to kind of hone in your vision. So this will give you just a way, again, to narrow down that statement. Once you've done these few activities, you are going to write a 1-sentence vision statement for your makerspace. You want it to reflect why you care about making and the idea of making centered learning, and tie it back to those values that you initially created about your school or community. Once that's done, and now you as a STEM group have a focused vision statement, now you can begin to deliver that vision statement to stakeholders or to the audience members that you feel like will play a valuable role in, again, continuing to sustain your makerspace. We know that makerspaces have a focus on people naturally because it brings people together to make something, do something, engage in an activity that's collaborative. And so taking that idea to your stakeholders will allow you to share the right people to help you expand the vision. This becomes really important in the sustainability piece of the makerspace. You need people who can help you with grant writing or find funding for your makerspace. You may potentially need volunteers who come in and work in the space. Community partners that can help you with future workforce development will be invaluable. So now we start to reach out to those people and identify who those stakeholders are. So before we jump into that communication with them, it's important to start to look at where you find those stakeholders. So you can look outward into the community itself, which we have through First Makerspace had a number of relationships with schools in particular and community organizations who are reaching out to local community businesses to have a direct impact on the makerspace that they have, whether that's guest speakers that come in and share with students, if it's a way that students can work towards an internship with a local business. There's lots and lots of ways that can be developed out. But looking at other businesses within the community that do things similar to what students are doing in the makerspace will be really important in this process. The next step is to look inward and to see within your school, within your business, within your after-school care program, within your Boys and Girls Club, whatever your makerspace, wherever it's located, we want to look at just the creativity that takes place in the school naturally. What are the students encouraged to do and discouraged to do within the walls of the school? What groups are already existing within the school that are maker related? And how does your school embrace multiple ways of knowing and understanding? So again, tying back to some of those values that you identified early on. And then to look forward to what you want the future of your space to look like. What indicators will let you know that students feel a sense of ownership over the makerspace, or who might feel most vulnerable in that maker learning program, and how do you figure out ways to support them? Each of these questions are really great to identify with your STEM committee to answer and to really think about how you reach all students equitably and how to involve the community. The next step of this process is after you've thought about all of that, is to complete the stakeholder mapping activity, which I really enjoy this. We've done this with every Maker Manager program that we've done since we started the program. And it is one of those activities where we get a lot of positive feedback later on that this was really important for them to do, to start to think about who are going to be those key people that will play a key role in your makerspace. So again, the documents for these can be found inside of the Maker Manager platform, but you will find this chart here and also a series of cards with stakeholder ideas listed on these cards. So as you develop your vision and plan for your makerspace, the audience and stakeholders are key considerations. And some of these people exist within the four walls that you're in, and others might be out within the community. Maybe you don't see or interact with them very often, but the idea is that you start to narrow down those people to find the specific targets that you believe will have the greatest impact on making your makerspace successful. So on the attached document, you will have a list of small pieces of paper with a variety of different stakeholder ideas listed, along with some blank ones, so that if you have more or specific people specific to you that you want to add, you can write those down. There's also some post-it note size boxes as well that would allow you to write down a stakeholder and maybe some notes or more information. We don't generally use those when we do this activity. But the idea is that now I take those little slips of paper with the names of the important people on them and I lay them out on this chart. And so you'll notice first that up the left-hand side, it says you're focused on the influence that these people have in the success of your makerspace, which may be a far fewer number of people than you believe. And then along the bottom, we're looking at the people or the scale of support they can give you. So it's from low to high on both sides, low to high level of importance, low to high level of support. And so we, in our Maker Manager program, cut apart those strips and we start to lay them down where they fit appropriately on this chart. So let's take a look at that for a second. The first thing that we're looking for, let's just start in the bottom right-hand corner, is the fan club. These are the people that are cheerleaders for us. They're really excited about the makerspace. They have high support, but they might not have a lot of influence. So we know that the influence generally comes from funding and the money. And there are few people in a school or organization that control the money. So they're going to be of more high influence. Our fan club people are probably not going to have that part of the influence, but they're going to be very supportive. This is probably going to be a lot of parents, although sometimes we can include parents in the influential side of things. But for the majority of them, they want their child to participate in a makerspace. They're cheering it on because they know their kid comes home every day from school and talks about how much they love what happens in the makerspace. So those types of people It might be your custodian, someone that maybe doesn't get thought of very often. You really want them to be in your fan club because you know that space is going to get messy and it's probably going to fall on your custodian. And so the more you can include that person, the more they're going to cheer on the space as well, even when they have to clean it up. The next section we'll look at is across the bottom, the people that are not a priority. These are low support, low influence. They may be in your building, but they don't really directly engage with the makerspace. That would just be specific to your building. If we move up across the top, the sections that we really want to focus on are the high support, high influence people. So from the list, we want to start to identify who our messengers and champions are. These are the people that are going to speak on your behalf as the teacher or the STEM committee that can go out and influence others to then come back and support your makerspace. This probably would be your principal. You really want them to be on board. You want them to support it. And there could be lots of other people within this section as well. Your STEM committee is going to be here because the idea is that you activate those people to go out and speak on your behalf in the community. This may be a direct relationship to a local business within the community that can provide some of that job opportunity for older kids that we mentioned earlier. And then the other side of this are your opponents. They have high influence but low support of your makerspace. These are just the ones to watch. And then hopefully at some point they see what's happening in your makerspace and they begin to move over to be a messenger instead of an opponent. And then from here you can identify who are those key target people. It might be 2 or 3 that you really want to start the conversation with. That could be influential in providing funds for your makerspace, providing items for your makerspace, donations for your makerspace. This is going to be key. So from this, once you complete this activity, then you really have a true focus of where you go next. You know the people that you need to speak to. You have a vision in place for your makerspace. You are ready to move forward and hopefully see the success that comes from the work you've done. So the idea then is that you begin to shape the learning environment. We know from our own experience that makerspaces are a joyous place. We love them. We hear nothing but positive things about those spaces and what's happening in those spaces, the learning that's taking place in that space. But it can also be loud and messy, and we want to make sure that we are creating the right environment where everyone wants to be. And that's about making it equitable for all. So we want the space to be flexible. It should be used as a way to learn about failure and how to come back from mistakes and try again. Keeping resources out and available for all who use the space is going to be important, and designating a space for student projects, which is probably one of the most difficult things, is finding the space for completed projects. That's all going to be important things as we move forward with this space. So as you identify all of those important factors of your makerspace, it's important to think about what type of space you have. The majority of the makerspaces that we do at First Makerspace are fixed. It's a location that is a single designated space. Everything is going to stay in that space, and either a teacher is teaching out of that space or people are coming into that space to use it on a regular basis. The next one is a fixed and distributed space. We've seen this in a lot of schools that we have done where they've chosen to have multiple spaces placed across their campus. Maybe that's a library space that has a corner or an area dedicated to making, but there is also a maker space in the building, and there is also a room designated for robotics. That would be more this type of space we're talking about. Fixed and shared means that it is a makerspace that is used by a variety of people. There may not be a designated teacher in that space, so all teachers are coming and kind of renting the room out to use it for projects. And then the last type of space that we have done is a mobile space. Ours is a Tinker trailer that is on wheels and can be moved from one location to another. We see this at a lot of after-school care places, maybe smaller private schools where they have multiple locations and they want a makerspace that can be mobile to move from place to place. That's the type of space we're talking about here. So once you've identified the space, then you can start to look at how this space is going to be used. Is it drop-in? Do you have to sign up? Is it only for certain groups of students within the building, and is that equitable? Is it only for after school care? And then how do you bring in students during the day that could potentially use it? And then what does scheduling and programming for that space look like? And that's probably the main question that really stumps people sometimes, is if you don't have a designated STEM teacher, then how do you create the Google Doc or the Google Drive or the sign-up sheet that sits outside the door that allows people to understand who can use the space, who's using it when, what materials are they using in the space, and how do we know that those materials are being replaced when they're getting low? So a lot of conversations that would be very important for your STEM committee to have as you prepare for the success. Once you have invested all of the time into moving through these steps with your STEM committee, you're now ready to start making the case for your makerspace. And to me, this is the fun part. This is where you get to share all of the impactful learning that's happening within that space. So it's sharing with your stakeholders what is happening and how do you go about doing that. So one important way is to display student work. What's happening in the makerspace is seen outside of the makerspace, and that can be done in a number of different ways. Social media is fantastic for that because you want parents to see and understand what their kids are learning in that space. Just having a display case outside within the building, but that allows even other educators to see what's happening in the space if they're not in there regularly. Displaying student work is going to be key. Inviting stakeholders to participate in the makerspace will be enjoyable as well. That could include guest speakers that are coming in from the community, parent volunteers that are coming in to help with an activity, lots of ways to introduce and invite them into the space. The next one is to plan a STEM night, and this is a big undertaking, but I do believe that the payoff from this is fantastic. We work with Decatur Blue Academy that holds one of the most phenomenal STEM nights I've been a part of, where they're, again, encouraging people from the community, not parents necessarily, but other businesses that have a direct impact related to the making, come and showcase what they do, potential future careers for makerspaces, or makerspace related jobs and employability skills they've learned in the makerspace that could eventually carry over to a real life job, can be shown at a STEM night, along with all of the things the students have done. They get activities that can be done with other siblings and taken home on a STEM night. There are lots of fabulous ways to do that. And then the last one, whenever possible, is to collect some of that data, survey the kids, and test their engagement level in a way, and challenge them to share what they've learned in the makerspace through video collected, questionnaires that are given, surveys that are completed. Anything that shows the importance of the space is only going to encourage others to support it in more and larger ways. So there's a lot to this particular topic, but we have found that if these things aren't done, a lot of those spaces that are just kind of quickly created and then somebody jumps in, sometimes they struggle through these things. So the more time and effort that can be put in on the front end, I think is really going to pay off at the end.